Hi everyone, it's Talya Pardo. I am a soul coach and mentor, and I'm a book editor and publisher. And it is my great pleasure to have here my friend Molinario. Sorry, that's a bit of a mouthful for me today, but I hope I got it right. Today is the first recording of Soul Speak after an almost full year of hiatus. So it really is a great honor to be able to re-kick it off with Railey today. Railey is a renowned love educator and relationship coach. She's dedicated her life to guiding individuals to break free from cycles of generational trauma and ignorance. With a remarkable journey, which she'll tell us about, from abandonment at birth to six-figure boss, you're just incredible, and that's kind of how I found you. She inspires others to develop the skills and knowledge needed to create empowered lives through her teachings and relationship intelligence. We talk about emotional intelligence, there's relationship intelligence, which we'll get into in this podcast. As a respected thought leader, Rayleigh provides the world with tools and techniques to cultivate thinking, thriving businesses, relationships, and lives. I hope I didn't mess that up too much, but thank you so much for being here, Rayleigh. Why don't you say in your own words, I find when I'm reiterating what people are kind of how they describe themselves, that's when I stumble because really it's your words that are the most resonant and powerful. And so I want the audience to hear from you what you do and how you got to where you are.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I am obsessed with your work. So it's honestly an honor to be a part of it. You're doing amazing things. So
You.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, my name is Railey Molinario. It's an Italian last name. It's my husband's
It's
last name.
beautiful.
And it is a little bit difficult because yeah, a lot of people get it mixed up the way that it sounds, but you did great. You did great. So thank
Thank
you. Yes, so I am a love educator and relationship coach. I work with both professionals and couples, teaching them how to utilize the power of relationship intelligence. So,
you.
relationship intelligence is very similar to emotional intelligence, but we're talking about how to utilize emotional intelligence in groups or in pairs. And it is completely life changing. When you understand how to interact with other people, how to really show up for yourself and set boundaries with other people, how to communicate, how to problem solve, all of these things, your whole life changes. It changes the way that you eat, the way that you sleep, the way that you speak, the way that you walk. I mean, it's just everything. And I absolutely love supporting people in their relationships so that they can go out in the world and do all of the things that they love.
I think that's really beautiful. And I'd like for you to tell our audience, not that you are defined by this past that you've been through, but I think it has most definitely contributed to the person that you are today. So if you could tell our audience a little bit of what you're comfortable sharing about what brought you to be like who you are today, what made you want to teach people about how to improve their relationships with themselves and with others and how to be, to stand up for themselves and be there for themselves. So like, what's the core of that for you?
Absolutely. So when I was born, I was abandoned by my father. He basically left me in the snow. And from there, my relationships weren't very good. I grew up with my mother and my stepfather in this very abusive and neglectful household where there was a lot of screaming and beating and just really toxic, poor relationships. So I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know how to speak to people. I didn't know how to connect with people. I didn't have self-love. I definitely didn't practice self-care. And so I left home at 16 and I didn't have any of these tools.
Mm.
It was this incredible experience of just trying to figure things out by myself. When I was in school, I was labeled as gifted, so I was very book smart. I excelled in school. They wanted to skip me a few grades. So I had the knowledge when it came to the textbooks, but there was definitely something missing. So when I went to university, I was studying 2 degrees. I was getting, A's in all of my classes. I was on my way to work for Wall Street. I was offered a job at Bank of America to be a branch manager. I mean, things were looking good on the outside. I was
Mm.
investing in the stock market. Like everything was great on paper, but I was absolutely miserable. I suffered from anxiety and depression. I had very low self-worth. I had a binge eating disorder. So, although I had everything on paper, on the inside, everything was just falling apart. And I decided one day that I was going to take my life. I met myself at that point, the lowest point I think we can come to when you just say, I don't want to experience life anymore. And I set everything up to make that decision. But just before going through with it, I asked myself, what if I could learn everything that I hadn't been taught up until this point? It's not that I don't want to experience life. I just don't want to experience life like this. And so I said, once you get to the bottom, there's nowhere to go from there. So why not? Why not try it and see what happens? I have nothing to lose. So that's when I started to figure out what are those things that are missing. Because again, I didn't know what I didn't know. I
Mm.
didn't know why I was depressed. I didn't know why I had anxiety. I didn't know why I just didn't have these social skills that so many people had. And so I started to work on myself. The first thing that I did was I started to listen to motivational videos by Tony Robbins and Les Brown, because growing up, I always heard these negative speeches, all of these negative words, you're not good enough, you're never going to be anything. And so I had to rewire that tape in my brain. I needed to tell myself all of the things that I had never heard before. And that propelled me into getting into things like yoga, meditation. I became vegetarian. I'm now vegan. So it was just the Kickstarter of this self-discovery journey, and I've never looked back since. So along the way, I realized that, hey, I'm not the only one. There's a lot
Mhm.
of people out here living with generational trauma, generational ignorance. And how are we supposed to know how to love and connect with people if no one has ever taught us? The first thing that I ask people when they come to work with me is, when did you learn how to have a thriving relationship? If this is something so important to you, when did you learn how to do it? And they'll think and they're like, I haven't. And so I ask them, did you learn in school? Did your parents teach you? Did they sit down and ask you, sit down and tell you, this is the formula for success, step one, step two, step three? And they're like, no, I've never had that. And it's sort of a rhetorical question, because unfortunately, we don't get taught any of this stuff, although it's so important for our well-being. So I
Mhm.
just decided that this is what I have to do. I have to share this information. I have to share relationship intelligence, because once you get it, especially in your romantic relationship, because that's the closest one to you, your whole life changes. I talk about how couples can become power couples, which is not, Angelina and Brad, it's not about the fame and the money, but it's about using the power of your relationship to create a life that you love. So you and your partner become teammates. You invest in partnership. You learn how to navigate life's difficulties. You can live whatever life you want. And that is what I want people to have access to.
That's amazing. And you said some really salient points that I want to bring back is, I resonate with a lot of your journey because I also didn't have a model for a healthy relationship and a lot of similar, anxiety, binge eating, low self-esteem, all of that. You came to it quite a lot earlier in your life of turning it around. So I give you a lot of credit. It took me a good 40 years to figure it out. But what's important that most people don't realize is that it's like sometimes somehow we think we're supposed to already know how things are supposed to, how to behave or how to interact with others. And we actually don't. What we know is what we were modeled and what we saw in front of our eyes. And then we take that with us. So also, excelled in school and I was the A student and everybody said, Talya, you're so together and look at you, you're really achieving and all of that. And I was so miserable, but I didn't even understand why. But also I didn't understand that my relationships, like how I contributed to the detriment of the relationships around me, how my own behavior and my reactions or the way I would treat people who are my friends and my close people around me, I didn't understand the impact that I was having on them because I was repeating those kinds of behaviors and attitudes. And it took me a long time to understand that, you know, it's something I have to look at for myself. It's not just that like I want to be a good person and I may be a good person, but I haven't learned exactly the things that foster connection and trust because I didn't have any of that. So how do we even know any of that? So many of us, I think, go through our lives knowing that something isn't right. Like, and I don't know if I'm correct in saying that I hear that a little bit in the beginning of your journey too, that like you knew something wasn't right, but you didn't know how to fix it or what it would look like when it was right, or when it felt good. And so even that, it's like, how do you know what to change if you don't know what the other side of things can even be, right? And
Mm.
it's opening yourself up to that to say, and I really give you so much credit, and there's really a spark of life in you that in your darkest moments there was a little part of you that was refusing to go down with it, and to just say like absolutely not, there's something I want more in life and I just have to figure out what that means and how to get there. And I think we all have that inside of us. It's just a matter of being able to listen to it. So I really, commend you and relate to a lot of your story. And I think a lot of people out there do as well, because we don't necessarily know what needs to shift and what we're doing that isn't working for us. We just know we don't feel right, or we don't feel good.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So tell me, when you talk about power couples and partnership, when you're working with your clients, so what are the kind of qualities that you try to teach them about? Like, or open their minds to, right? Because it's hard. It's not like you're giving a lesson. It takes, like, these journeys take time, and sometimes it's just a matter of that seed of someone having an awareness until they're ready to come around to their minds, and their hearts are ready to come around to opening to it, because they have to work through so many other layers. So what are the
Yeah.
kinds of approaches that you use with your clients?
Yeah, so I come from a very educational perspective
Mhm.
because for me, when there are two people in a relationship, let's say that they've been married for 25 years and they're on the brink of divorce and they have children and they're living in that roommate stage and they just, they get into fights every day or every week, they're sort of at their breaking point. I I really get them to realize that in this situation, you're both suffering. So, what happens a lot of times is they'll come to me and they'll say, he's doing this and she's doing that, and it's her fault and it's his fault. And they sort of, point the finger at the other person. And what I really want them to understand is that you are both suffering in this situation. Neither one of you is living your best life. Right. And so the reason that we are self sabotaging, meaning that we're continuing to be in this kind of relationship, is because we don't know what we're doing. We don't realize, number one, what a relationship can be, because a lot of us haven't seen that. And number two, what is that exact formula? It's not about, you know, this may work or that may work. We have been able to study relationships on a scientific level. We know what the formula is, and it's very specific. And there are certain things that you need in your relationship to make it successful. If you have it, you're going to be successful. If you don't have it, you're going to suffer. It's really as simple as that. So if you want to have a thriving relationship, it's about finding someone that you are in love with, right? Love is a big part, but most people think that that's it, right? As long as I love this person and they love me, everything's going to be great. So
Yep.
we meet someone, we're attracted to them, then we have the attachment phase, then we go into the phase of being in love, happily ever after. Well, if that was the case, then we would all stay with the first person we fell in love with, and I wouldn't have a job. But it's not that easy. It's just about understanding, yes, you have to find someone that you love, but then you have to master relationship intelligence. And that's the big part that most people don't know what it is, and they don't put in that practice because they don't know what it is. So it's things like having a common vision. This is the first step to creating a thriving relationship. You and your partner have to be on the same page. And so many people think that there's one right way to do things. And so everyone must automatically agree with them. So, for example, right now in society, we're having this conversation of what is the role of a man? What is the role of a woman in a
Yeah, that's it.
heterosexual relationship?
Yep.
Should the woman be contributing financially? Should the woman stay home and cook and clean? We're sort of breaking into these different directions where there's not one way of doing things. And the answer is there's no answer. You have to
Mhm.
decide what's right for you. So there are successful couples who follow gender norms, and there are unsuccessful couples who follow gender norms. So it's not about choosing one of those ways of living, but it's about finding someone who agrees with you. So having a common vision is about sharing values, boundaries, expectations, goals, all of those things that make you compatible with someone. Compatibility is not just, oh, we like tennis and we both eat
Right.
soup. Like
Yeah,
it's so much deeper than that.
absolutely.
So we have to be on the same page. And then once we find someone that we're in love with, we have that common vision, then we build the building blocks. So we perfect our communication. Most couples have no idea how to communicate. They're
Mhm.
doing a lot of this, right? They're doing a lot of back and forth, but they don't have the true essence of what communication looks like. Um, Understanding how to problem solve. This is a huge one. So many couples don't know how to get through their problems. So they get stuck, they get frustrated, they start to blame, they start to go inward, they keep secrets, all of these things because they don't know how to problem solve. A lot of couples don't know how to create a safe space. You should be able to talk to your partner about absolutely anything. Even if you think, okay, they're not going to like this, you still feel safe to bring anything and everything up with them. How to build intimacy, how to practice interdependence, all of these things that, again, if you have them, you will be successful. If you don't, you are going to suffer.
And it's when we're entering it, like you said at the beginning of this part that you were explaining about how, we think we fall in love and that's it. And we don't realize that there is so much work that goes into relationships. And people say often, like, oh, I don't have to work so hard, but really like they don't realize the rewards for that work, first of all, right? If the motivation for you is that you have a deeper and more closer and intimate emotional relationship with your partner, then it's worth everything. And you're going to want to do that. And all of those elements are so crucial. Communication for sure. And I think that so many of us communicate, like you said, in the way of like, this is what I want. You're not listening to me, or, like just kind of declaring their demands. And I think an important element around that's so crucial that people don't like take into consideration sometimes is the element of surrender. Like these almost negotiations or these conversations between partners that go back and forth. First of all, it's never like one conversation and we're done. Okay, we agreed. Like life changes as a relationship continues. You're always having these discussions and you're always having these conversations, but it's also with the mind of like, you're not here to win. Like you're not here to be the victor in this conversation, and it doesn't weaken you to concede. And that was something that I know in my most recent relationship in my marriage now, that in the beginning I was always fighting, and so was he. Like we both just came out so combative because we're just so wounded and we had so much baggage, and we just needed to make sure that like we weren't trampled on the way we were in the past. And as your relationship has evolved, we've both learned, I think, through very difficult conversations and really tough, sometimes arguments that we've had to kind of like take some space and come back, but realize that it's okay to say, you know what? I don't necessarily agree with that, but I'll like I understand it, or like I hear you, or okay, we'll do it that way. Because when a person feels heard in the relationship, or when the person, it sees that the other person is willing to be open, it's not a weakness. If anything, you're adding strength to the relationship because it does flow back and forth, and it makes the other person also more amenable in the future to be the one to concede or agree or kind of allow for the way that you need things, or to hear your needs and to be open to that. So it's really a balance, and to understand that like that's not weakness. And I think so many people are worried, especially women, right? Because in the last few decades, it's been about like women have to declare what they need and say what you want. And, it's not a weakness to concede to something that your partner might want or need, so long as it doesn't, abuse you, of course, and or cause any detriment to you. But it's okay to have those ebbs and flows and balances. And I think that's so important for people to recognize when they're in relationships and having these conversations that you have with couples and learning about emotional intelligence and conversation and communication.
1,000%. I mean, what you're talking about is vulnerability,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
vulnerability is the essence of intimacy.
Yes.
And this is how we create safe spaces. Understanding that I'm going to do things that my partner doesn't like. I'm going to
Mhm.
have a different opinion than
Yeah.
you. I'm going to make different decisions than you. And, that flows into interdependence. We have to understand that we are not the same person.
Yeah.
This whole idea of like two become one, I'm
Mhm.
nothing without you, fifty
Yeah.
50. It's all nonsense. It's about when two
Agreed.
people come together, they create three. There's me, my husband, and then us as a couple. And I'm allowed to have my own thoughts, my own beliefs, my own opinions, and so is my husband. And the beauty is when it's necessary, we come together and we come to agreements. Sometimes it's not necessary. My husband does calisthenics, he's a sprinter, he's a professional skier. I'm not into any of that stuff. So it's good to be two different people and practice that interdependence and celebrate yourself and continue to have the relationship you have with yourself. And when it comes to
Crucial.
making
Yeah.
decisions about house cleaning or time management and things like that, the two of you use those problem solving skills to come to those agreements. It's a beautiful process, and it does become easier when you practice. You said some people don't want to do the work. Well, guess what? If you don't do the work, you're not going to have the relationship. And if you are with someone and you say, oh, I don't want to do it with them, I'm just going to find someone who's a better partner, right? Because a lot of people,
Yeah.
they go from partner to partner looking for the right one. And then we get to the point where we're like, there's no good men out there. There's no good women out there.
Yep.
And the problem often isn't the person, it's the lack of relationship intelligence.
Absolutely. And I think that that's so much in the modern world of dating today where it's like, oh, I didn't like this, so we're done. Right? Like that first of all, the willingness to be vulnerable, but also the understanding and the acceptance of the other person for who they are and as they
Mhm.
are, because that's what you're falling in love with, right? You don't want to fall, you're not falling in love with someone to make them into a blob of you. You're falling in love with them because of their qualities, right? And that can easily complement you. So yeah, that it's we're a very disposable society,
Yeah.
and we're very quick to run. And I think the message and the understanding that relationships are long-term evolution is very hard for our modern day society to grasp, I think, because we're just, what do you mean? Like, and five is even in the beginning of my relationship with the mentors that I worked with, where she was, I would call her and tell her about like whatever we were kind of going through. And she'd be like, oh, took me a long time, took me several years till we kind of were able to negotiate that. And that doesn't happen anymore between us. And I'd be like, oh my God, years. Like, how can I get there faster? But there is no faster. It really is the evolution that it takes you to revisit similar issues sometimes over and over again until you get to a place where you can both see and hear the other person and try to kind of find that meeting place or the better communication and understand like what you're doing here, right? And the communication is so essential too. Once I learned, like I said, my husband and I, we were very, very feisty. And once I started, I think, saying to him, you know what I realized? We're fighting like we're enemies, like we're just here to like get each other with what we're saying. And I started working on myself with each argument to, catch myself sooner and sooner. And I started just saying to him, we're a team. I'm not out to get you. I'm just not happy that blah, 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 whatever, and I'd be like, and I know you're not happy with this, but let's try to remember that we're here, we're in this together, and we're not out to hurt each other. And that would just do this like beautiful, like I would just see all the tension kind of go out of his body, and he'd be like, exactly. And we almost didn't need to resolve the issue afterwards because once we realized we were on the same team and we're not here to hurt each other or get each other, or, which there's no victory here if all we're doing is fighting for 3 hours. That shifted even how often we would argue or the nature of the arguments, because you have the common vision, you have the understanding that you're there together as a team. And I think you're really promoting such a beautiful message, Riley, because that's something that is so like it's so missed when you hear people talking about their relationships. Um, so I love everything you're doing, and I love what we're talking about because it's like I keep on to just go, yes, this is another truth. Yes, this is another truth.
It's life changing. You're talking about fighting in relationships. I have a master class called Relationships Without Fighting because
Mhm.
I truly believe, and the science shows that thriving relationships have zero fighting. And of course, we have to make some room for human error, but for the most part, we're not fighting because we understand how to solve our problems without the frustration, the screaming, the walking away, the feeling like I'm not going to say that thing because I know they're going to get upset. So when we create that safe space and we have this step one, step two, step three process of how to solve our problems, you want to go through that process because in the end, you both get what you want. And it's really beautiful when you understand partnership, exactly what you're talking about. It's not partner one versus partner two, but it's the couple versus the problem.
Yeah.
Even if you're thinking, I'm so frustrated because my husband never takes out the trash and he always says he's going to take it out and he never takes it out. And so you go to your partner and say, how dare you? Why haven't you? I can't believe you. I'm so angry because we're losing the battle right there.
Yeah.
What we want to do is take a step back and ask ourselves, what is the true nature of the problem? And
Mm.
it's not about taking out the trash or not taking out the trash. Because if that was the problem, you would just take the trash out,
Yeah.
right? You would do that. So that's not the issue. It's not the trash. It's not the money. It's not the bills. It's not those things. It's much deeper than that. So in that situation, it could be, I don't feel seen. I don't feel appreciated.
Yeah.
I don't feel as though we have an organized household. I don't feel that our house is as efficient as it could be. So there's deeper issues there. And when we bring those to the table and say, okay, let's put our heads together,
Mm.
right? I'm smart, you're smart, I'm creative, you're creative. Let's figure this out together. So, how can we better organize our house? How can we better appreciate each other? How can we better, get the things that we want and build this beautiful life together? It becomes a power. And that's what I mean when I say power couple. It's the two of you working together and seeing each other as partners, not as enemies. Because so many times we look at our partner as our punching bag. They're sort of the person that we feel safe with enough to let all of that trauma out, to let all that frustration out, not realizing that that person is a tool for us. The reason we're in that relationship is because we love them, but more than that is because we feel better with them. They make our life better. Having them by our side makes life a better experience because in 2023, we don't have to be in relationships. We don't have to get married. We don't have to have kids. We're doing it because it brings us a better experience. So why not utilize that experience with our partner to create this amazing life for ourselves, for them, for our family? And we can do that. We don't see it a lot in society. We definitely don't see it in the movies. We don't hear it in the music. It's more about the toxic stuff, the fighting, especially like reality TV,
Well,
you
it's
know?
not, yeah, it's the like the what's the word I'm looking for, the titillation of it all, right? We all get it's like the drive by watching, seeing a car accident. We all want to see drama.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do too, for entertainment purposes. I love it. I like the trashier the better. I love I've been watching like Selling Sunset,
Your
because
daughter's
my
watching that.
day
Yeah.
because my day and my work is so serious. I like to unwind with like the complete opposite, like nonsense stuff, but I do understand that that is just drama. It's just entertainment. It's not real life.
Yeah.
And so once we understand how to distinguish the two, we go inward and we recognize these are the things that I have to learn in order to create this amazing life for myself. Like you were talking about understanding.
Yeah.
That is a huge, huge skill that couples can utilize. But most people don't even know what that means. So when they say, I don't understand you, I don't understand why you would do that. You can understand someone and completely disagree with them at the same time.
Exactly.
You should have understanding in every aspect of your relationship, and if you don't understand, it's more about just clarifying, because understanding just means to be able to absorb the information. So if
Mhm.
you tell me that the sky is green, I can look up and say, okay, I understand what you're telling me. I completely disagree. I
Mm.
see it as blue, but I understand you're telling me it's green. Okay, we can go from here. And once we have understanding, then we can use our problem solving skills to come to a conclusion if we have to,
Yeah.
or just respect each other's differences if we don't have to.
Right. Absolutely. And that's the thing, right? And it doesn't take away from your love for the person by disagreeing, and it doesn't take away from the nature of your relationship by understanding that you don't see eye to eye on this, right? It doesn't have to create a rift. And that's the other thing too, what you said about how we tend to use our partners as punching bags. And I realized that also early in this relationship, and spoke about it a lot with my mentor who I've worked with for years, but it's that we think we have the right to take it out on our partners. There's something, it's a little bit of a juvenile reaction, right? Like how we take things out on our parents or close family, and like, we kind of still push forward, but like we actually don't have the right to unleash our baggage on them, because they're another individual, and they're here by choice with us because they love us. And they're, it can end up being abusive, but even when it's not like physically abusive, it can be emotionally abusive or verbally abusive when we kind of take out that baggage on them. um, and what's important to understand is, rather than letting them bear the brunt of that, use them, like you said, as a tool, or like the way I've seen it is like a mirror. Have that, understand how they see you, and what you portray to the world about yourself, that you can reflect on and use as a tool for growth to help you shift your behavior or learn more about yourself. Because if there's a way that you interact with your partner, um and they reflect back to you like, that wasn't all right, or that wasn't about me, or all those little things that we tend to kind of unleash or pick at. And instead of just saying, well, I'm allowed to do that, or that's fine, my husband can take it, it's a bad assumption to make. It damages the relationship, and it doesn't serve you in moving you forward in your own growth.
Mm,
Right. So it's really important to remember like kind of those elements, I think, around that too. Like we don't have the right to take that out on them. If anything, allow them to be the mirror to us and use that for our growth, like you said,
mm,
because we're just too free with it sometimes, I think.
yeah. And why would you want to? You know,
Right.
if you love this person, why would you want to? Because you wouldn't want that back at you, right? We want our partner to appreciate us, to see us, to hear us, to love us, to nurture us, connect with us and all of those things. So don't we want to do that back to them?
Of course.
And I think that, going back to vulnerability, it's really about that. It's really about, I'm going to hurt you before you hurt me. I'm going to stand up for myself, and I'm going to show you that I'm not the one to be messed with.
Yeah.
Right. And I have to put my foot down. And it's kind of, there is this huge shift now in how we relate to people
Mm.
and how we build relationships with people. And now, anything from dogs to children to partners, we're shifting how we communicate. So I've seen, I have a dog. He's not very well trained, but he's 14 now. He's my first dog, and I never really trained him. Um, he's not too bad, but I have watched some training videos. And I think in the past, it was more about like just simply being dominant and demanding that your dog do this, and sort of a more aggressive way of training them. And now we're moving it more into like a reward system. So instead of punishing bad behavior, we reward good behavior. And I think we're doing that with children as well. We're learning that you don't have to hit kids. You don't have to, torture them or put soap in their mouth or all of these things, get a switch from the tree and all of those things, that you can talk to them and you can teach them and you can guide them. So there is a more educational, nurturing way to communicate with people. And the same in your relationship. You don't have to scream, you don't have to shout, you don't have to put your foot down. It's really about coming from an educational and practice where the two of you say, hey, we don't know how to do this. We've never been taught how to do this. And so I'm ignorant and you're ignorant. Being vulnerable, being open and saying, we're on this journey together. We're going to learn how to communicate, and I'm going to mess up and you're going to mess up. I'm going to put in 100% every day to do my best to listen to you without judgment, to accept your independence, to build this life with you, all of these things, and just be vulnerable as a couple, utilizing that third entity of the couple to say, hey, we're on this journey together. And as long as we put the effort in every single day, we show up and we try this, then that's really all we ask from each other.
Yeah, and I think you said it perfectly also when you said like, why would you want to? And we forget that. Like we said, you forget why you're in the relationship. You're with someone that you love, that you want to treat well, who you want will feel good with you. And that seems to sometimes be this separated, like compartmentalized, like a piece apart from how we think that it's okay for us to behave with each other, because we often, again, don't know, like you said, we don't know any differently. We weren't modeled anything differently. It becomes habit already. And then that brings us into not just like the relationship intelligence, but also learning to heal your own wounds and your own traumas, right? That I think also has to go hand in hand and side by side with the work in your relationship, so that
Absolutely.
you can better understand yourself. So we've got like about 5 minutes left in this podcast, and then what we'll be doing is we're going to sign off here, and I'm going to invite our audience to join my group, The Wisdom Well, where Awakened Women gather on Facebook, where you can get exclusive content for the rest of my conversation with Riley. But for the last 5 minutes, I wanted to touch on something that we brought up at the beginning, where we were mentioning, the discussion that's really very thick in the atmosphere these days around masculine and feminine roles. And you know what's your take on that? Because I know how I see it, but do you see it as something that interferes in the way couples manage with each other, like communication wise? Do you see with your clients that there is very often, not always, of course, but very often a certain approach or mind way of thinking on the male side as opposed to the female side? And like, do you need to find a bridge for that?
Yeah, this is a really good question because I have heard this coming up more and more: masculine energy, feminine energy, and our communication techniques and the way that we show up in the relationship is very different, and we have to really understand and settle within our masculinity and femininity. I've heard this really coming as a popular topic in our society. And my opinion on that is that you can believe whatever it is that you want to believe, but when it comes down to relationship intelligence, it's 100% gender neutral. It's sex neutral. If you're in a, same-sex relationship or a heterosexual relationship, even if you're in a polyamorous relationship, this is for everyone. So when we're talking about compassion, communication, interdependence, it has no gender, it has no sex.
Mm.
So for me, I think if you do practice, having gender norms in your relationship, and you believe that the man is supposed to be the head of the household and the woman, cooks and cleans or something like that, you can do that, all the power to you. And that's fantastic, as long as you and your partner both agree on that. And not simply because you think that's going to make you happy, but because you believe that's what's right for you in your relationship. So a lot of times we're trying to figure out which boxes to check. And as long as we check those boxes, we're going to be happy. So we're supposed to follow these gender norms. We're supposed to have one child. We're supposed to, make this much money. And as long as we do all of those things, we're going to be happy. Well, it doesn't work like that, because there are some people who, as I said, they follow the gender norms and they're happy, and some who follow and they're not happy. And it's not that the ones who are unhappy just need to, do it more, because again, it's not about that. There are couples who don't follow gender norms and they're extremely happy. So it's not about, if you do those things, it will make you happy. It's about, do is the way that I want to live my life compatible with my partner? Do we agree on this not because we saw a TikTok video or we heard, read this woman's book or something like that, but is this genuinely the way that we want to live our lives? And are we on the same page when it comes to that? If so, then it's just about utilizing that relationship intelligence to navigate your relationship, being able to understand that communication, yes, you may think, okay, men communicate this way, women communicate that way. But when it comes to the basis and the foundation of communication, it has no gender. So if I'm having if I'm having a fight, right? If I'm frustrated and I need to tell you that I'm upset because you're not taking the trash out,
Mm.
the the conversation that we have, it has no gender. So there's a key when it comes to communicating, and it's that there has to be one speaker and one listener. So a
Mm.
lot of times when people are frustrated and they have that high energy, both people are speaking at the same time. That means no one is listening and they're no longer communicating. They're just two people speaking. So that again, that has no gender. So we have to understand that relationship intelligence is just about the fundamentals of how we function in a relationship, regardless of what we believe, regardless if we have children, regardless of what religion we are, what background we are, what cultural differences we have. I see so many couples and they're like, oh, well, my partner has a very different culture, very different traditions. And I'm like, okay, that's beautiful. When it comes to relationship intelligence, it doesn't matter. All these things don't matter. All these boxes, they have no place. And that is the beauty. That's why it works for everyone. Absolutely everyone, regardless of your personality, regardless, I see a lot of times these personality quizzes and these different things, and I think it's great. I think that labels are great to be able to express yourself, to dig deeper into what you connect with. But the beauty of relationship intelligence is that it's completely neutral and it works for absolutely everyone.
It's a really beautiful breakdown because you make it tangible. When we talk about relationships, there's a lot that feels intangible or not, unclear about how to go about it and very overwhelming, frankly, when people are in the thick of it and having a trouble with their relationship. And you really break it down into these categories that can be addressed and measured, right? And really defined. And that seems like a really great approach to help couples who are kind of a little bit lost. You
Yeah.
really bring it home. So we're going to sign off here. Is there one last thing you'd like to share with our audience before we head over to the wisdom well?
Yeah, I would just say, when it comes to creating that amazing relationship and creating that life for yourself, the first step is really believing that it's possible. Believing that you can have a relationship that's completely fight free. I know a lot of people don't talk about it. People probably think that it's crazy, because we believe that fighting is normal. We believe that toxicity is normal. We believe that it's normal to stop having sex and to get into that roommate stage. We've been together for 25 years. How is it possible to still have intimacy? Well, it is.
Mm.
And we are really fighting to allow people to become comfortable with that idea because we are changing so many norms that we see, on social media or on TV and music. So just believing and understanding, even if it's just from me, I have this kind of relationship. I work with people who get these kind of relationships. And it's not that when you become a power couple, you don't have any problems, right? That's another myth. It's not that we don't have problems. I still have bills. I
Yeah.
still have sick family members. I live in the world just like you do. But when it comes to becoming a power couple, you go through those problems with understanding and compassion and teamwork and partnership. So it just makes the experience so much easier.
That's beautiful. Would you like to share where people can find you if they'd like to work with you or see more of what you do? Can you please share your links and how to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so everything I do is just Railey Molinario. So you can find me on my website, RaileyMolinario.com, on Instagram, Facebook, just Railey Molinario.
Perfect. And all those links will be in the show notes, so you'll be able to reach out to Railey and connect with her if you're interested in delving more into relationship intelligence. Thank you so much for being
Thank
here
you,
today with me,
sweetheart.
Railey. It
Thank
has
you,
been
thank you.
an incredible, wonderful conversation, and I so appreciate it. I hope we get to
Thank
do
you so
this.
much.
Thank you.